Let me know when we're good. Excellent. So we are now meeting as a committee of the whole, and it's August 11th, 2022. I'll call the meeting to order. Is there any declaration of interest, pecuniary or otherwise? Councillor Soever.
Yes, Mr. Warden, I'd like to declare an interest in the closed meeting matter. I've been involved in that matter from the side of the municipality. So I would declare, and so I will not be attending the closed session on that matter.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Bordignon, does that impact you as well?
It does not, Mr. Warden, I don't believe.
Okay, thank you. All right. So moving on, item number 3 is a delegation by Francesca Dobbin, one of my favorite people from the United Way. She's going to give us an update on community support initiatives. Francesca, welcome. Good morning.
Oh, there we go. Now it's red. Oh, now I'm amplified. So Ani, bonjour, good morning. So I'm Francesca. I'm the Executive Director of the United Way. For those of you who received this PowerPoint ahead of time, there's some changes to it because the data changed, but we'll just run through this. It's going to go fast because it's a lot of information. So some of you who've been around for a while will remember back in 2016, we graciously took this wonderful building off your hands for the outrageous sum of $1 and have continued to make this as a downtown community hub in the city of Owen Sound. And certainly in the last 2 years, there have been PPE in one door and PPE out in the other door and all the resources around it. So come and visit us and we'll show you where everything is and what's going on. Community gardens on both sides of the buildings. It's a happening place. There's 9 staff. You know, we're dealing with staffing issues as everybody else. We're onboarding a new fundraiser fairly shortly, but we have a very lean administration side of things, as well as a pilot program staff funded through very different sources of funding, which we will briefly get into. We as an organization focus on 3 priority areas. These are set by our national office. So from poverty to possibility, helping kids be all they can be, and building strong and inclusive communities. So this gives us a broad opportunity and a broad mandate to get involved in a lot of community projects. So this is our 2001 financials. You know, the blue, that's the big one. That's our pandemic fund. And a lot of this is money comes in and money goes straight back out into the community. We were fortunate at both the provincial and the federal level as United Ways to be their one of their vectors of choice for getting funds out into the community. So it come down from a federal level to our community, and then we would get it out in response to everything around the pandemic. And then our revenue side of things, again, the blue this time is fundraise. We are 100% fundraised organization. Every morning we get up and we have to go find the dollars to do what we do. We are not a transfer payment agency. We certainly have government agencies coming to us and saying, hey, can you do this? And we always say, yeah, if you pay us, we'll do anything. But we do have to find the money. And it's really important to understand that because we're always out there fundraising to do the work I'm about to tell you we do out there. So we use guiding community committees, and I'm using that iceberg analogy of what you may see versus what the depth is of our organization. So when we're going to go and address an issue in the community, we don't just say, hey, you know, that squirrel ran across the road in front of me. I think we should do something about squirrels. It's where we get the information. So our Grey Bruce Poverty Task Force, what are they seeing? What's the research? Healthy Communities Partnership, the Grey Bruce Children's Alliance, what's happening around children's services. We look to them to inform the work. So people may say, hey, you know what, this is actually an issue. And when we look at the data, you know what, that's not an issue, but this over here that's related to this is the core of what's going on. And of course, we also use the 211 unmet needs data to let us know. And that's where that's our canary in the coal mines. And I'll go into more of that later. We also provide a structure for grassroots programming. So we're a registered charity. We have audited financial statements. You know, we are fairly robust in our organization. And then we have grassroots initiatives that need that structure. So we'll have a corporation that says, you know what, we really want to support reconciliation. We really want to support our pride communities and their activities, but we need a charitable tax receipt. We need somebody with audited financial statements, and we come along and say, we will be that for you. We don't take over that project. I don't need anything new to do, but we will offer some, you know, guidance and mentoring, and we will mentor these small community committees so that they have the structure to do and make those positive changes in the community that they're working on. We also provide funding out to the community. So we have a Hope for Kids Fund, which supports children that are associated with Children's Aid, but not in care. There's funding for kids in care. These are for kids who are with their families still, but they're living with a lot of poverty. So we cover camp, we cover snowsuits, we work towards that kind of thing. We fund 211, as does both counties, and we provide general call out in the fall for grants to other registered charities in our community to support what their programming is doing, as well as meeting the needs of what we're seeing in the community that need to be addressed. We also do flow through. So some of you will have been at the Reconciliation Garden at Nawash Park, and we're the flow through for that. We just, you know, we bring the money in, we receipt it, and we pay the bills when the bills come in, as well as all of that pandemic fund distribution. Right now, we're up to our eyeballs in our backpack program. We have 1,600 requests that are going out the door right now. That's up, I think, from this time last year. So we're a little concerned. Supply chain has hit us really, really hard with this. Over the years since we started this in 2005, over 30,000 backpacks have gone out to local children. And the savings to those households is about $2 million because then they can focus on clothes and shoes and those kinds of things. We purchase wholesale, but of course you may see me in other stores with carts full of things because, again, supply chain issues are hitting us kind of hard this year, as they have for 2 years. In terms of what age group, one of the interesting data points here is the purple is our high school students. So we do backpacks on 4 age groups: primary, intermediate, senior, and high school. And our high school is the largest recipient age group for this program, which of course challenges the program because that's also the most robust. It's got the most stuff in it. It's about $130 now per backpack for that age cohort, whereas a primary is only about $50. So that, you know, adds again to that financial stress for this program. It also is that, you know, again, one of those indicators, because generally in the lifespan of a household, by the time your kids are in high school, you know, you've gotten the promotion, you've got cost of living increases, you know, you should be more financially stable than when your kids were young. We've all been there. This says that's not happening, or that people are going backwards with their finances. And we use 211. So if anybody who's listening is interested or know someone who can use this program, they call 211 and register through that. So they don't have to call our office, they call 211. We also send backpacks when people are, when we have churches that are sponsoring refugees, they will swing by the office in February, pick up backpacks. And if there's kids involved, they go to the airport. And that's the first Canadian thing they get is a fully stocked backpack they can color in the car on the long drive home. Our utility assistance program is another big program. This is the data that was changed. I was rushing to get this to the clerk on time, and then I flipped. So in the original, I had seniors and adults flipped backwards, which made me really panic because it was going to be a massive jump in seniors, and then I realized I'd mixed my columns up. So I am human. So this, we report on this on a July 1st to June 30th timeline so that we can get the winter in the middle, so we can look at that whole spectrum of what utility assistance is. It's fairly stabilized now because we've been doing this for about 5 years for that data comparison. So when we compare the data, we have a fairly, it's apples to apples. So 352 applications, 755 people, over $200,000 in United Way dollars out to those households. And the average income for those households is $21,000. So that's extremely low for people to be managing on. Breaking it all out, you know, there's a provincial program that does electricity and natural gas. This is in addition to, in other words, for that household that accessed the provincial program, they still needed more supports. So $32,000 out around electricity. Natural gas, we're interesting with this, and I'm sharing this with Linda, the county climate change staff, around the switch from furnace oil to natural gas. We're seeing a considerable drop in the request for furnace oil. We saw a jump in propane, and then with the natural gas expansion, we're seeing a drop, and it's because natural gas is that much more cheaper. So people are managing better, and we can see this again in that data, and it's really quite interesting. And I'm really boring at the bar. Furnace oil, this is where we have to fundraise again for this, because there's no provincial program, no provincial dollars around oil, propane, and cordwood, which are our traditional rural sources of heat. So thousands of dollars. Again, you see propane, that can be a real problem for people. It can go from 55 cents in the summer to $1.40 in the winter when supply and snow becomes a problem. But people are switching from furnace oil to propane because it's $100 to go from propane to natural gas. It's a regulator on your furnace. So if somebody's replacing a furnace, they're defaulting to propane in the hopes of that natural gas expansion. So we're always cheering on the natural gas. And cordwood, this is really climbing for us, and we're really having a challenge with suppliers. They're running out. So come March, we often have trouble finding cordwood. We also have a financial literacy program. We put this in place quite a few years ago because, we want to get upstream. So backpacks and utilities are the emergency. That's the, hey, here's a plate of food today. You're not hungry today. The financial literacy program is trying to help people not be hungry tomorrow as well. This is not a case of where we sit down and go, okay, we're going to teach you to budget. If you're living on $21,000 a year or $12,000 a year or $8,000 a year, there is no amount of budgeting that is going to get you out of your financial poverty situation. But we will make sure that you get connected to a free income tax clinic. We will make sure that if somebody is abusing you financially, we can get that stopped. We can get people navigating that really complicated piece. And we do a lot of education with that program. And as you see from this breakdown of who's accessing the program, it's a lot of low income. We had a huge issue with the seniors last year because of the way certain people's CERB interacted with their gains in GIS. And it was a mess. And I will say props to MP Alex Ruff's office for helping us and navigating with the seniors, and the landlords who, had to take a cut on what they were paying for rent to keep them housed, and the negotiations we did. It was a nightmare, and it was all a CRA coding issue. And of course, 211, I know you get presentations from Pam around 211. So this is the data from 2021. Health was the #1 call, and housing kind of was second. We're in a pandemic, so it makes sense that health is that big issue. 6,000 people, up 8% accessing 211, which is great. Because when people say, well, I don't know who does, just call 211, they know everything. So then this is the unmet needs. And I know this is really tiny print. So if the unmet need, they call into 211, I need something, and you cannot meet that need, it goes on their unmet needs category. So what does it mean? So we take housing, which is on the left, and break it out into the data on the right. So 20 calls looking for a homeless shelter. We do not have one in Grey and Bruce counties. That's an unmet need. I could not get housing. And again, this is last year's data. So that's where we can track what's going on. When we started with 211, this is where we saw the utilities start to climb, and we built our utility program because we saw the unmet need for utilities for oil, wood, and propane coming through 211. And then why was the need not met? And again, that #1 thing, no resource found to meet the need, or they were ineligible, or the wait list is full, or they couldn't connect with the agency. The number of people who call me and say, I'm on a 10-minute break. I get 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the afternoon, and a half an hour lunch, and I'm trying to do agency work. And the agencies are 9 to 5, and they can't connect with the agency. We've done a lot of advocacy on behalf of people who have these tiny windows. And I'm like, okay, call me at 10, and then call me at 3, and I'll tell you what I found out between 10 and 3 on your behalf. We also do a lot of work around food security. I have a food security staff that we brought on board in the pandemic to assist the 22 food banks and the 9 meal programs and everything that's happening out there. At this point, from January of 2020 through to now, over 250,000 meals have been served to people in Grey and Bruce County. We do food rescue every day. The United Way goes to area grocery stores, picks up the ugly food and takes it to OSHARE, who assesses it and then fires it out to other meal programs as well as cooks. We've supported community gardens, all that logistics. And this wonderful picture of people in Chesley was from actually a Grey County staffer who donated a cow. And we can tax receipt the cow, we can tax receipt the cost of the abattoir, and then the meat went out into those meal programs. So we all met in Chesley to divvy up the meat. We work on a lot of micro programs. So our kettle hamper, which is what's on the display back here, was looking for more food options for homeless people and people who were in motels during the pandemic. And you can read the little cards and pick them up and look at that. And it was a way of addressing, we couldn't get OSHARE out to Chatsworth if Highway 6 was closed because of bad weather. So how do we manage people sheltering in motels in Chatsworth or other areas? And it's been so successful. Again, it's one of those, we did 200, 250, and the funding agencies came and said, keep going, keep doing more. So we've done over 500 and we'll do another 200 this winter. And they're all in the Sydenham just because I need more space. We have rapid antigen tests and KN95 masks. If anybody's looking at them, we have programs for when people achieve homelessness and they get into housing. Well, now they need all this stuff. So lots of micro programming going around that. And of course, the SOS project and everything around SOS, because we were doing that yesterday. So while we may think our supports in our community are fairly linear and you just start here and you just go down the road, that's actually what it all looks like together, of sorting out who does what, how it manages. We really need a privacy form signed. So could you get that to us? Well, I'm living in the middle of Desborough and there's no fax machine and all that kind of stuff. So, things are messy. So that's my quick presentation on everything United Way at this point, and I'm absolutely thrilled to answer any questions.
Well, thank you very much. And I can see that you've done this presentation once or twice. It's very good. Lots of information there. And of course, I sing the praises of 211. It's a counselor's best friend because people will ask something and I'll say, I don't know, but call 211 and they'll probably know. Even things like tourism, right? You can call for tourism information. You can call 211 and they know it. All right, council, any questions? Kim?
Thank you. And thank you so much, Francesca, to you and your team for the presentation and for all of the work that you and your team do on behalf of our communities. You're just a critical part of our ability to get things done, and we're so grateful to you. Council, on your desks today is an envelope, and I'm pleased to announce that this year's Warden's Banquet is moving in a new direction in recognition of the important role that the United Way plays. The 2022 Warden's Dinner will become the 2022 Warden's Gala and will be a fundraiser in support of the United Way. So the save the date is there for November the 4th. It's at the Inn in the Bay at 6 p.m. There'll be a lovely dinner and entertainment and a silent auction. And I really hope that we're all able to be there and to support you in the tremendous amount of fundraising that you undertake every year. So thank you so much, Francesca.
Oops. Sorry. There we go. Councillor Soever, you're next.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Warden, and through you, the town of Blue Mountains is in the position where it's in the Simcoe Muskoka United Way area, and I know perhaps our speaker would like to tell us how is that relationship between the two United Ways, and how do they collaborate on projects, because we are in a rather difficult jurisdictional issue there.
No, that's a great question. Of course, United Ways collaborate all the time. We have Perth Huron to the south. Thornbury is kind of that gray area. We do have backpacks that go into Thornbury. We support Beaver Valley Outreach. We are limited for our geographic area is very key around where the county boundaries are, which does get frustrating for some areas where we have a service or a program and that's not offered across the street. And we have to say to people, I'm sorry, I can't, you're across the street, you need to call this United Way or call 211 and see who in your community is doing that. And, we always get well, can't you just go one more block? And it's like, well, then there's another side of the street to the next block. And before you know it, we're over in Ottawa. So we do work together. We don't, if somebody calls our office from that area, from Craigleith, and says, I'm looking for support around something like that, we don't just say, hey, that's not us, sorry about your luck. We will try and help them connect to the right agency that way. And we talk all the time. There's a new executive director with the Simcoe Muskoka United Way. Met them at our conference in Winnipeg this spring. So we do connect. The challenge is when we have different programs. So there's no wood oil furnace program for Simcoe. They do things differently. And that's where maybe they would have to default to the food bank, and we work with Beaver Valley Outreach. But unfortunately, we have to draw our boundaries as does Grey County. But it always in collaboration, and we try not to leave somebody hanging without some sort of support.
Yes, I want to thank you as well for supporting the Beaver Valley Outreach. They are our main point of contact for most social services. So, perhaps that's the way to deal with the kind of problem, is that you can coordinate with Simcoe Muskoka United Way on support for the Beaver Valley Outreach and let them handle the services, so we don't get into this jurisdictional issue.
Yes. Carolyn and her team are amazing, and we often use that network of food banks and community resource centers to kind of triage, have the big conversation, sit with somebody, what else is going on, and then, get that laundry list of, well, this goes here and this goes here, and we'll get that sorted. They're really amazing.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, anyone else with questions? That's it. Francesca, thank you very much for your time. And by the way, there's a display for the members present physically. There's a display at the back, and perhaps would you be able to stick around until we have a break, Francesca? Because I know I spoke with you about what's in that display, and I know that other counselors will find it very interesting if we get you to sort of do a little bit of presentation about what's back there. That would be great. Thank you. Thanks again. And council, if you get a chance, perhaps during the break, I would encourage you to just go back and take a peek. It's really, really interesting what's back there. All right, so we are moving on now with the consent agenda. Council, is there anything that needs to be pulled from the consent agenda? Deputy Warden?
I'd like to pull A, Agriculture Advisory Committee minutes, please.
Turn on my microphone. I don't see any other hands. So I will look for a mover to approve the consent agenda with the item A pulled, moved by Councillor Soever and seconded by Councillor Woodbury. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. All right. You know what? I'm going to suggest that we take a short break so that we don't keep Francesca the whole time. So it's now 10:40. Can we break for, say, 15 minutes? What does that bring us to? 55. So 5 minutes before 11, we'll come back. So we'll come back at 10:55 sharp. We'll see you then. Okay, council, welcome back. That was interesting, wasn't it? United Way stuff. All right, so we are on item 6A now, dealing with the rising construction prices and impacts on development charges report. I'm looking for a mover to put the item on the floor. Moved by Councillor Bordignon, seconded by Councillor Body. And Randy, you have the floor.
Great, thank you, and good morning, everyone. As council will recall, the county development charges background study was completed last year, and that identified a number of growth-related capital projects, which ultimately formed the basis for the updated development charges that are now applied to new development. Council may also recall that housing and long-term care became eligible categories after the previous study was completed, and therefore we incorporated some projects, growth-related projects related to housing and long-term care in the 2021 DC background study. The capital costs for growth-related capital projects that were estimated in that background study was based on what we're seeing in terms of construction prices in previous years, as well as at that time. As we all know, construction prices have increased significantly since that time. We're seeing anywhere between a 10 to 30% increase in various construction costs compared to 2021. The increases can be attributed to a number of factors, including an increase in the costs associated with labor, fuel, materials, asphalt concrete, to just name a few. We anticipate that these construction prices will continue to increase into 2023. For growth-related capital projects, the DC eligible portion that is funded from DC reserves is based on the revenue received from development charges that has been collected based on the growth and development that's happening. The DC revenue from residential and non-residential growth is collected based on those rates that were calculated as part of that study and are reflected in the DC bylaws. They are adjusted or indexed on an annual basis, and they're scheduled to be adjusted come January 1st. And those are adjusted based on what's called the non-residential building construction price index, which is based on, in our bylaw, the last 12-month period ending September 30th. It should be noted that the index is the only index permitted under the provincial legislation for indexing development charges. So there's no other option for us to utilize something different. That is what's required as part of the legislation. Staff will be bringing forward a future report. We bring forward a report every year identifying what that construction price index will be once we know that. And so just to give you a sense, though, of where it could go. So the annual CPI reported in the first quarter of 2022 was 17.3%. And so if construction prices stay the same or continue to increase, then we could see an increase to the development charge rates by at least that amount, which would come into effect again January 1st, 2023. In speaking with Hempson, so Hempson was the consultant that assisted the county with the creation of the development charges background study. They noted that there is a typical lag between the index and the actual tender costs for capital projects. They also noted that typically the index does not fully reflect the actual municipal expenditures for construction capital projects, even though the index is calculated using specific construction material and labor costs. So although the construction price index could increase the development charge rates applied to each development, the actual revenue received, again, is based on the growth and development that is anticipated to occur. And based on the rising cost of construction and the increasing interest rates, we could see a lower rate of growth compared to what we've been experiencing over the past several years. If the rate of growth is less than the original growth projections identified in the background study, then this could have an impact on the amount of revenue received from development charges. So when you combine the increase to capital projects due to the rising construction prices, as well as a potential decrease to DC revenue if we experience a slower rate of growth, it could result in the DC reserves going into a negative position within the next 5 years. For 2023 capital projects, staff will be applying increased estimates for those capital projects based on what we're now seeing in construction price increases. And we will be presenting a draft of that capital budget in September. For the growth-related capital projects, what we're using is the DC eligible percentage shown in the DC background study is being applied to the increased capital project costs just to maintain the same level of DC eligible percentage being applied to that project. So finance staff have run some scenarios to account for the anticipated construction price increases and the projected DC revenue received from growth. And it's possible that the DC reserve could go into a negative position as early as 2027. Based on this, we've identified several options in the report that could be considered to avoid the DC reserve going into a negative position. So just go through those options quickly. The first option is to defer capital projects. And this would be by adjusting the growth-related capital projects based on the amount of growth that we're actually seeing, as well as based on the available funds in order to fund those projects. Again, if growth were to be slower than projected, growth-related capital projects could be deferred until that growth picks back up. This may be challenging as there are some growth-related projects that need to be to move forward based on the growth that has occurred already. In some cases, it's also better to move forward with projects ahead of the anticipated growth to ensure that the infrastructure and services are ready for that growth when it is to occur. Staff will continue to monitor the growth as well as the available funding to ensure that the timing of those growth-related capital projects is appropriate based on the rate of growth. A second option is to open up the development charge bylaws and update the DC background study. So should the DC reserve start to go into a negative position prior to the next DC review update, and that's scheduled to be occur in 2026, one option again is to open up the DC bylaws before that 5-year review period. This would require an interim update to the DC background study, requires a public meeting, will require us to hire a consultant to help assist with that process. The third option is to put the DC reserves into a negative position or to debt finance certain capital projects. So this is to essentially this would allow growth-related capital projects to continue. However, the potential risk is that if growth were less than what was projected than the DC reserves, then the DC reserves could remain in a negative position for quite some time, or worst case scenario, may never catch up. This option is less risky for fast-growing municipalities, as it's likely that the DC revenue will be consistent and that eventually the DC reserves will go back into a positive position. There is also the option to debt finance certain projects. There is a similar risk in that if the growth were less than the projects, then paying back the portion of the debt to be financed through DCs could take longer, and the interim funding sources may be required to cover that portion until the DC revenue were to recover. So staff do not recommend putting the DC reserves into a negative position if possible, and would only recommend debt financing associated with larger projects where a portion of the funds is to come from DC revenue and where the debt financing could work. The fourth option, which is what staff are recommending at this time, is to continually monitor the DC reserves and the incoming DC revenue against the capital project costs to ensure that the DC reserves are not approaching a negative position. We do this already, but we're recommending that staff monitor this more on a quarterly basis. If staff see a significant shift in DC revenue, or that the DC reserves are being utilized at a quicker rate than anticipated, then we will bring back a report to council and may recommend some other options as outlined earlier. So we will also continue to monitor the growth that is occurring compared to the projected growth rates to ensure that the timing of those capital projects is appropriate. So at this stage, staff are recommending that this report be received and staff be directed to continue to monitor the DC reserve and advise council immediately should the DC reserve start approaching negative levels. And I don't know if this was a team effort, this report. So I don't know if Mary Lou has anything further to add. She's shaking her head no. So we're happy to take any questions that council may have with respect to this report.
Well, thank you very much for that report. Councillor Body, you're first.
Thank you very much, Warden Hicks. Randy, has our growth exceeded the DC study estimates or just sort of met it? Because that would probably make a difference, even if it comes down, but it just comes back to growth or back to the prediction or the forecasting. You know, are we going to be okay?
Yeah, we have interim growth numbers based on what the DCs that have been collected. We only have up till mid this year, is that June of this year. I don't know if we've done a comparison or projected out in terms of what that looks like to year end, but that's something that maybe Mary Lou can speak to.
I'm a little shorter. I need the mic down further. In 2021, we collected just under 7.8 million. And up to the end of June, we are sitting at 2.8 million. So less than half.
What was forecast? You know?
Off the top of my head, I don't know, Councillor Body. I'd have to get back to you on that.
So for the people that couldn't hear, the question was, what was forecast? And there's no clear answers yet. Anyone else? Councillor Mill.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. As recent as this morning, I saw that the American economy has, the inflation rate has plateaued and dropped off a little bit. And I'm wondering, I'm sure the Canadian inflation rate will have an impact on what your plans are. And so I'm hoping if things stabilize, we should be all right with monitoring and proceeding as we planned.
Yeah, the numbers seem to be going in the right direction when it comes to inflation rates. As you noted, the American rates were released yesterday. And there was, I think it's now from 9.3% to 8.5% in July. I think the Canadian rates come out in a couple of weeks. So that'll give us an indication of whether or not the Canadian inflation is following suit. We hope that the inflation is starting to come down, because that no doubt is a factor in terms of what's driving some of the costs with respect to construction and other things. So yeah, we'll continue to monitor all those things to make sure that if numbers are proceeding in the right direction, that's a good thing that'll help when it comes to trying to fund these capital projects that we may not see on the revenue side.
Councillor Robinson, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and good morning, everyone. Randy, thank you very much and for this report. I very much appreciate the heads up to it. And Mary Lou also, thank you for it. I note in option 4 that that staff will be monitoring and then bringing back a report to council when there is an increase or a significant shift. I wonder if you could just identify the criteria that you'll use or the percentage that that will be the threshold for the report to council. Thank you.
We haven't identified a specific percentage. I think the key will be with the new council, we need to also inform them of the risks associated with development charges, and we'll have a better idea of inflation. The good thing is, you know, years ago when we only did a 5-year capital forecast, you're only really looking 5 years out. Even though the forecast is for 10 years, we are looking especially at, say, transportation or any of the growth related projects that are DC eligible. The forecast with the background study is 30 years. So there is no set criteria, but I think this is a as we start to see some of the projects come in and we're looking at the costs compared to the background study and what we're budgeting, as well as, you know, if we're seeing a slowdown in the development charges we're collecting, then, you know, it's our obligation to bring that back to council so that they're well informed.
Thank you.
I do not see any other hands, so I will call the question. All those in favor of the motion to receive and to continue to monitor? Hands up. Anyone opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Randy and Mary Lou. Next is item 6B, which is this is a mouthful. I find it's hard to say. Tax increment equivalent grant agreement. It's Savannah on deck. I'm looking for a mover to put the item on the floor. Moved by Councillor Bordignon, seconded by Councillor Hutchison. Savannah, you have the floor.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And it's that reason we like to call it the TEAG, because it is a mouthful, the Tax Increment Equivalent Grant Agreement. And this is a second team effort before you today. It is because of the partnership between all 4 departments that we're able to bring this report forward. So I am presenting the report, but all 4 of us are here to answer questions should you have any. And this is also the first of the CIP program that we're bringing forward to you. So we were here a couple of months ago with the heritage tax rebate participation. And today we're here with what is likely the most significant program available through the CIP program for all of our municipalities. As you know, from the County Council approved CIP program in 2019, the purpose of the CIP is to really boost development momentum across the region with targeted incentives that are county-wide, and I didn't identify locally at the municipal level for what you need the most. One of the most complex and impactful grants available through this program is this TEAG, and the very first municipal request for county participation is now being presented through this report. As you know, the CIP is also meant to be very specific to priority development. So there were 5 key action items that our CIP at the county level and all the local levels look to. And those are identified in the report. Number 1 being an increase of attainable housing stock, including secondary suites, multi-unit housing, purpose-built rental housing, rooming house developments, and apartment dormitory style developments to aid in our attainable housing stock right across the county. So the tax increment equivalent grant, or the TEAG, being one of the most significant incentives available, is meant to stimulate major investment by deferring part of the increase in property taxation because of the redevelopment or the rehabilitation of a certain property. So these are major projects in order to qualify for a TEAG. In order to participate, the municipality will receive a grant from the county that would attribute to that increased assessment over a period of up to 10 years. So each municipality was given the ability to define what their program looks like locally, as long as it's within that 10-year period. And the incentive phases in that tax increase related to the reassessment because of those property improvements. So the benefit is that it assists in reducing those significant upfront costs that developers feel when they're specifically looking around purpose-built rental housing. And we know that it takes a little bit of time to recoup those costs that they're putting upfront. And that's where the TEAG really comes in. So for a TEAG to be enacted, county participation is enabled via an agreement with our member municipality. So it's the member municipality that enters into an agreement first with the developer, and then the member municipality would come to the county requesting our participation that aligns with the program that they have. And that's how the agreement would be structured. So it is us providing a grant back to the municipality, not directly to the developer. And the education portion is not included in the program. This is just the municipal levy and then the county levy dollars. So the very first municipal TEAG that is coming to us today is from the town of Hanover, and it is focused on that priority development around attainable housing stock. And it is a proposal for 2 buildings, 2 6-story, 71-unit multi-residential buildings to provide a total of 142 purpose-built rental units in the town of Hanover. The applicant has confirmed that this is a $60 million project at 651 23rd Avenue in Hanover to create those 142 units over 2 phases. Until the units are built and they are assessed, we can only rely on estimates. So the numbers that you have before you in this report are purely based on estimates because until MPAC has told us what that value is. And we know what our tax rate is the year that this comes into effect. We are estimating the best we can. But as, like I said, really meant to lessen the upfront burden of cost and to help make those targeted priority developments much more viable, to be able to kind of tip in our favor and see the developments actually happen. The legal and legislative requirements, that is where we have Michael, should you have any questions around what that looks like, but it is really through the Planning Act that allows us to, again, enter into that agreement and provide that grant to the member municipality, not to the developer itself. So that's how these differ from the municipal CIPs to the county CIPs. And in terms of the financial and resource implications, the estimates that we have at this point, Hanover is looking at $525,000 participation per building over the 5-year period. And the county participation would be estimated at $216,000 approximately per building for a total of $432,000. And the way that we have looked at this in the report that we brought forward originally to approve the CIP was that this is considered a lost revenue. This is not something that we are budgeting for to be able to provide a grant. It is something that will not come to us. So that's the difference when we're looking at these TEAGs. So very similar to the Heritage Program, to any of the DC waivers or deferrals or application permits. So in the long term, what this will do is really grow that assessment base locally for all of Grey County and also provide much needed housing for Grey County residents who are either current or hopefully future residents of the region. So if you have any questions, you have 4 of us here to be able to assist. And we are also looking for future opportunity to have delegated authority to enter into these agreements with the member municipality, since the onus really does rely locally, to be able to include that in a future delegations of duty bylaw. And we do not anticipate that this will be a common grant that we are working on, because like I said, it is a very significant investment that needs to be made to trigger a TEAG. So that is end of the presentation.
Well, thank you very much, Savannah, and indeed very exciting. 142 units to go in where it's needed for sure. Councillor Patterson, you're first.
Thank you, Warden Hicks, and good morning, County Council. Yes, Hanover is very pleased with this development happening just off of Grey County Road 28 near our northern, if you can say it, water tower, if you're in the area. Our council did approve it unanimously, and we're looking forward to the growth in accommodations and the economic growth that will happen in southern Grey County. Thank you.
I do not see any other. Councillor Keaveney.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and good morning, everyone. Savannah, I just don't want to put you on the spot, but I wonder if I could ask you on page 2, where it speaks to increasing attainable housing stock. So I know there's always controversy about a definition of attainable versus affordable and so on, but I just wondered if I could ask for your version, so to speak, because I'm certainly assuming that affordable would be included in this CIP incentive, and if you could share any thoughts on the terminology around attainable.
That's a great question. Thank you. And through you, Warden, this project specifically is not affordable housing. So it is not within the 30,000 or below threshold or the 30% of the incomes. It is the attainable side, which we tend to look at anywhere between that kind of $40,000 and $100,000 income level is where we tend to see attainable, though as inflation changes, that number changes a little bit. But this is for your nurses and your teachers and your management level retail workers would be where I would see this type of attainable housing fit. The average, I believe, worked out to be 1,800 approximately per unit, but that was the average. So there will be less and there will be more on the housing stock.
Thank you. I do not see any other hands, so perhaps it's time to call the question. All those in favor? Is there anyone opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much, Savannah. We're now moving on to item 6C, which is the Home Child Care Agency participation in the Canada-wide Early Learning and Child Care System. That puts Anne Marie, oh, it's not Anne Marie, it's Tara, sorry, on deck. I need a mover to put the item on the floor. Moved by Councillor Burley, seconded by Councillor Gamble. Tara, you have the floor.
Good morning, Council. We're here today to seek council approval for the Grey County Home Child Care Agency to opt in to the Canada-wide Early Learning and Child Care Program. Grey County does directly operate this licensed home child care agency with 24 providers within our license across Grey County. As a licensee, the licensed home child care agency has the ability to opt into the system, and by opting in, families that use this program will see the benefits of a reduction in their daily fees charged for the cost of licensed childcare for children up to the age of 6. Families who are using the licensed home child care agency between April 1st and September 1 will be eligible for a rebate for fees paid up until that time, provided that we opt in by the September 1st deadline. The fee reduction and applicable rebates will be funded through the Canada-wide Early Learning and Child Care System and have no levy requirement to participate in this program. I'm happy to take any questions about opting in.
Thank you, Tara. Council. Councillor Mill.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and thank you for the report. In the media, we hear lots about $10 a day daycare. How close, like in your report, you talk about a rebate to the parents. How close are we going to get to the $10 a day, or is that just a slogan?
Through you, Mr. Warden. It is a phased-in approach. So for 2022, the rebate is 25% of what the family is currently paying. In 2023, it will reduce to 50%. And by the end of the 2025, the families will be down to an average of $12 per day to cover their costs.
Any other questions? Then I call the question. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much, Sarah. All right, we are moving right along. We're on to item 6D, which puts Anne Marie. Hi, Anne Marie. Coming in from vacation, I believe.
I am. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning to you. So we're now dealing with the 14th Street Supportive Housing Project request for proposal results. I need a mover to put the item on the floor. Moved by Councillor Boddy, seconded by Councillor Carlton. And Anne Marie, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. So this report is just basically an update on how we've been moving along with the project, and also getting approval to award the contractor. So as you're aware, we did acquire 396 14th Street in Owen Sound, and are looking at renovating the site into 12 individual units for supportive housing. We did go out for a request for proposal for a general contractor. This was released on June 28th and closed July 26th. We are recommending the bid for the renovation go to JP Commercial Contractors. The bid is $3,743,000 exclusive of HST. The building itself is around 15,500 square feet, and does work out to approximately $246 per square foot. So this includes a renovation of the interior into the 12 individual studio style residence units, shared common room, office space and staff space, program rooms, service spaces, and it also includes a new roof, outdoor siding on some of the building, and of course any of the site work that is required to be done too. JP Commercial Contractors is a local company out of Owen Sound, and they have done various reconstruction or renovations and new builds in the area. Chapman House and Saugeen Secondary School are two of the more recent ones that they have completed. We would be looking at entering into a CDCC construction management contract. Construction will be starting in August, so we'll be getting right on that contract, and the build estimate is done done around April 15th of 2023. This will meet all of the timelines that are required in order to receive funds for the program. Financially, looking at funding it through a number of resources, we've been piecing together all the funding that we can to make this go. We were fortunate enough to receive some funding from the Social Services Relief Fund. We bought and purchased the property with that. We're paying for our architectural fees and any of our planning studies and permits. There will be around $463,000 remaining in which we will be able to go towards the construction costs. We are going to use some of our COCHI funds that we receive from the province. We receive about $500,000 annually in order to build affordable housing from the province. So we're putting all of that towards this build. We are applying for a contribution fund. This is a new fund that the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation has come out with recently. We are eligible for 900 to 1.2 million. We haven't received confirmation on what that amount will be. The $900,000 we definitely qualify for. Depending on the energy efficiency level we could possibly meet with the renovation, that could increase our funds to 1.2 million. So and then the rest of the funding would be through a debenture, working with finance in order to figure out what that final cost will be. Annual operating budget impacts, there will be a net levy requirement of $113,000 to run this annually. And as for staffing, we are working with our partners at Canadian Mental Health Association in applying to the Ontario Health Team for some funds to supply the supports for the housing and possibly some other operational costs too. So that is still underway at this point. And I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Anne Marie. Council, are there any questions? Councillor Milne.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and thank you, Anne Marie. It's an exciting project. I looked at the floor plan and I see that there are 5 offices and 11 workstations. Is that the staffing level that is needed for this project, or is there other work going to be done on this property? Thank you.
Certainly. So we are looking at 24-hour staffing. Again, whatever funds we receive from the Ontario Health Team will determine exactly what type of programming is going to happen there. But we are also looking at providing our by names list staff out of there, any of our homelessness outreach staff. So this will be where they will be located. So it won't just be staffing for people that are working there. And also we'll have community partners that will be coming in. One of the offices actually has a sink so that if there was any primary care that needed to happen on site, it could. So there will be various staff on that site.
Thank you. Good question. Anyone else? I do not see anyone else. So all those in favor of to receive this report and to award the contract to JP Commercial Contractors in the amount of 3.74 million exclusive of HST. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will go back. Thank you, Anne Marie. We will go back now to item 5A, which is the Agricultural Advisory Committee minutes, which are dated July 27th, 2022. I'm going to say it'll be moved by the Deputy Warden and seconded by Councillor Bordignon. Okay, Councillor McLean.
So I'm proposing a slight change from receive to endorse, as the clerk has put into the motion that is there. Part of my reason, if I may continue on that, since we have a mover and a seconder, I just want to make sure the seconder was okay that was changing from receive to endorse.
I'm sorry, just one quick second. Is that an amendment? So should we be voting on the amendment to? Okay, so in fairness, the seconder does not know what you are proposing. So Councillor Bordignon, perhaps, how do we do this then? He doesn't know. So how does he?
Through you, Mr. Warden, I seconded to get it onto the floor for discussion.
Right, but what you seconded was to endorse it, and there's something else being proposed. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Just to clarify, Councillor McQueen's motion that he intended to put forward was that the agricultural minutes be endorsed as amended by supporting the correspondence from the municipality of Tweed and supporting that that resolution as amended.
Okay.
So we just wanted to confirm with Councillor Bordignon that you are indeed okay to second that motion as Councillor McQueen wanted to present it.
I am. Thank you.
Excellent then. So we have a motion that's been seconded as amended on the floor, and now you can discuss it.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. And I'll give you the reasons why. And it is in the correspondence that was on the Ag Advisory agenda. And basically it's correspondence from the is it the city? No, it's the township is Tweed. I think it is Township of Tweed. That the $50, I'll read it off here, that whereas the cost associated with a wildlife damage claim typically exceeds the administrative fee of $50 per claim as provided by the municipality, or sorry, the municipality by OMAFRA. So what I'm saying is I think we should endorse this because the cost of everything else, $50 doesn't go very far. And I've sort of heard even from our own evaluators that $50 time you go out to a farm or a property, you do the paperwork, if there's follow-up, take it to the office. $50 doesn't really cut it. And my concern is, are we going to lose evaluators as well? So it's important that we provide this service. So I think it has merit to endorse it or to support it. So thank you, Mr. Warden.
Thank you. Any other speakers on the item? Then we'll call the question. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to suggest a short break. We have just, or do you want to go straight into closed? Would it be the preference? I'm seeing a lot of nods for going straight into close. Okay, then we won't take a break. We'll just take a second then to.
Mr. Warden.
Councillor Bordignon, yes.
Sorry, upon reflection, and I have had discussions with Mr. Weber at council chambers about the closed minutes. Maybe out of abundance of caution, maybe it's best if I do recuse myself from the closed session meetings.
Very good. Thank you for that. All right, so we are going to close there. That committee of the whole does now go into closed session pursuant to section 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended to discuss an appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal, one, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals, and number two, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. I need a mover, please. Moved by Councillor Robinson, seconded by Councillor Patterson. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. So we'll just take a second to get the right people in the room. Okay, thank you very much, Olivia. It's now 11:57 and we are back in open session. And I would indicate that council met on the item indicated in the agenda and on nothing else. Council, we're now on item 8. Is there any other business? Item 9 is, are there any notices of motion? Seeing none, I'm going to call for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Milne, seconded by Councillor Hutchison. All those in favor? Is there anyone opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. Good meeting, and we're done at 11:57. I think that's a first. Thanks, everyone.
Council,